It's the start of July, and we're actually going to put some new plants in the ground here. It's a little bit late in the season to actually start some bushes, some fruiting plants, but we've got the opportunity. They had some great selection at the local nursery. There are a few things that we've learned in our first year trying to actually start a homestead on the Colorado High Plains. Let's take a look at a few. It starts with the spacing. The spacing, about 8 foot from the other row, have our plants about 6 feet apart. It's really driven by what you're planting in the ground. We've learned a little bit more to pay attention. Our first year we really didn't pay attention to the different plants' needs in terms of space and sizing. This year we've learned to do that a little bit more. But then it comes to the hole itself. The end plant on this row is an elderberry bush. And the elderberry bush is actually has a pretty wide base, a pretty large root ball. What we're gonna need to do is go down about the whole depth of the pot. So this is gonna be about 10 inches to a foot. We're gonna go down just a little bit further so that I can get some soil underneath it. And we're gonna go about 2 times the width. The soil here in the high plains of Colorado has to be taken into account. And that's one of the things we maybe didn't think about in our first year last year. The clay here actually creates a little bit of a bowl because the plant kind of grows out, has some nice, wonderful soil to begin with, and then it hits clay. And the clay of the high plains actually is difficult to penetrate, not only for the roots, but it's also difficult to penetrate for water. So it creates kind of like a cereal bowl, if you want to think of it that way, for the water to sit in. You want to make sure that you've got enough room that with that water sitting there, but also the initial root growth has enough room to move out and spread out and strengthen a little bit before it hits that harder clay that it now has to push into. One of the best investments that we made this year, as we've learned, is an electric auger. Now this auger is a Ryobi 40 volt lithium battery powered auger. Battery just snaps in. It's ready to go. It's easy to recharge. Doesn't take very long to recharge. This auger is way lighter. It can be lifted in one hand. Is way lighter, even though it's definitely got some heft to it, than a gas powered auger that could be considerably heavier. The other nice thing about this is, unlike a lot of gas-powered auger, when this hits significant rocks, things like that, it doesn't buck as hard as a gas-powered auger typically does, because pistons are driving the auger. The other nice thing that I really like about this is just how easy it is to take apart. It's modular. Put the head in, separate the battery out. A lot of the weight's in the battery, so it's easy to throw in the truck or be able to move around, hand to a friend, whatever we need to do. There is one downside though. One downside is, with our heavy clay, oftentimes what we're going to have to do is kind of pull out, clear the hole a few times, in order to go back in and dig into some of that clay and get maybe the next few inches out. So what I typically end up doing is going at several angles into the hole, and then using a pretty good shovel to connect the holes that I've made into the larger hole that I need for the plant. In our first year, we watched a lot of YouTube videos, and we just assumed that if somebody else had a YouTube channel or a homestead and some healthy plants, they knew what they were talking about. What we've learned is Some stuff is zone and geographic specific. You have to really pay attention to your zone and the soil that you have. We have Colorado clay, and the clay line is right about here. Above the clay, it's this crumbly soil. Some of it's really good topsoil, some of it's not. It's also very rocky in that first few inches, so you have to pay attention to that and make sure that plants that aren't going to do well in rocky soil, that you're taking that into account. And then once you get below that, you end up with this clay bowl. So we need some help for the soil to give this bush the best chance to survive. We're going to use two additives. The first one is Mike, and Mike is short for a long word that I'm not even going to try and pronounce. It's essentially an enzyme formula that gets essentially wrapped around the root ball, and this helps stimulate the ends of the roots to help them push into the soil, grow out, have healthier root growth. But the soil itself is a little bit rough. It needs some help. It needs some additional nutrients in this area. It's very dry, it's very crumbly. We've got several types of deficiencies here. So we're going to use a product called Soil Pep, and Soil Pep, this is from Mountain West. Your area may have something else, but it's got a number of different things in it that helps actually improve the structure of the soil, loosening it up, giving it more consistency. You mix the soil that you already have with about a third of this Soil Pep to surround the plant, especially with that soil that's kind of going to get pushed back in around the root ball, to give this plant the best chance that it's going to get. We'll push this backfill in first, and then we'll use that pile. Again, this backfill, we're going to use about 1/3 soil amendment to 2/3 dirt that's already here, and then we'll water in the plant really good. All right, so now that I've done a little bit of initial watering, I'm actually going to give it a little bit of a bowl, and then I'm going to water it a little bit more. Not too much of one, but just enough that you'll see me kind of mound with some of this excess dirt to help keep all of this initial water that I'm giving it from running off. Now remember, I don't have to do a gigantic mound here because there's essentially a large clay pot around this thing underground. I'm going to give that a moment to soak in, and then I will add some more once this surface has soaked in. And that's all you have to do. It's really tempting to go and water this like every day or every other day. That's going to drown it. That is a lesson that frankly we didn't learn in the first year. We've killed several plants, and it's something we really only learned recently this year. You got to pay attention to the tagging on the plant type, what they like for watering, and how they're going to grow in your zone. If you don't do that, you can think you're doing the right thing. Hey, I'm giving it water. Gosh, these are hot days. I'm just going to give it more water. That doesn't help. There is a certain point where the water just becomes overwhelming for the plant. They're not getting the nutrients that they need out of the soil, and the soil itself is weak, right? The root growth beyond that initial ball, that initial digging, is not being stimulated to push out and grow better roots. That's really it. Just pay attention to your zone, your soil type, and the type of water, storms, natural rainfall, Really, with something like this, we'll probably water it once or twice a week. No more than that, otherwise we'll end up killing it.